Hey everybody, it's Scully. So I wanted to talk about something pretty interesting in today's video. I wanted to talk about communication styles. I know, what are those, right? I don't know how many people are familiar with different types of communication styles, but as you could imagine, because people are unique and complex in their own way, a lot of us have our own communication styles. So this is pretty interesting for me to learn in school, considering I actually learned it in a business class, not a psychology class. Pretty interesting. Well, from what I've learned, it was broken down into four major categories. I'm sure there's probably more, but this subject primarily focused on four main categories when it came to different communication style from one individual to the next. There's spiritual, there's considerate, there's direct, and there's systematic. The project I got to do with this one was pretty cool. What we got to do is pick four fictional characters, pick each of those four communication styles and why we thought this person had this communication style, etc. So I had a lot of fun doing that project. Because basically, with spiritual's probably one of the ones you see the most. These people with their communication styles, they tend to get a lot more energy kind of going. You see them talking to people, they talk with their hands, they get real enthusiastic tones in their voices, they get really animated, they really get into whatever it is they're talking about. So if you've ever seen anybody do that when they communicate, have any of those kind of traits, they are probably the people that would most likely be considered spiritual. Now, some people can have more than one of these communication styles, but that's probably one that you're probably the most familiar with seeing. There's also the considerate communication style. This one's not quite as common, but it's quite nice if somebody does have this one, because it's quite a nice trait. Because people who are considerate, you'll see them talking to people, but if you see two people talking and one of them has this trait, the person with the considerate communication style is the person who tends to do more of the listening than the speaking. You see somebody talking and they're nodding, like they're understanding. And I mean, everybody kind of, when somebody's talking to you, you want to let them know that you're listening to them and everything. But these people, they're very notorious for being more listeners than speakers. And they tend to ask people, hey, how was your day? How are things going? And they tend to ask more questions rather than kind of go off on their own tangent like some people do. So these are the people that a lot of people like to speak to, especially if you're the spiritual person. You're going to want that considerate person to listen to you and really be engaged in what you're talking about, especially if you're really amped about it. It's, you're in a good mood and you want to share that with somebody else. Yeah, considerate person's going to be a pretty good listener for you. There's the systematic communicator. These people tend to be a lot more analytical. They use a lot more facts when they speak to people. These are the people that are really kind of your bookworms. You ask them a question, not only are they going to give you an answer, but they're going to give you usually pretty defiant answer. They're going to really go in depth and they're going to, I don't know how many people really cite their sources when they answer questions, but assuming that this person is and they've really, whatever it is you're speaking to them about, they're very knowledgeable about it. They can back it up with things they've researched, read about. Yeah. They're going to be a pretty interesting person if you debate with them or anything kind of factual, because they're going to really give you a run for your money. And they're very wonderful people to talk to in terms of how knowledgeable they are. But of course, if it's something like a political debate, yeah, things can get heated and yeah, so that might be something to take into consideration if you're going to talk to somebody who's very systematic, as you try to one up them with certain facts. They may not think too highly of that, but if you don't know something, I'm sure they'll be happy to explain it to you too, though, which is why they're also really cool to talk to. And then the final one is direct. Well, being direct can present itself in many different fashions, but people who are direct, they're the people that they really kind of just get straight to the point, if I'm being honest. Like, they don't really like to beat around the bush. Let's face it, if you have somebody who has a very direct communication style, and if you really irritate them, they're going to be pretty straightforward about it, more than likely. Like, if they're angry at you, yeah, you're probably not going to even have to ask yourself if you're mad at them, because they'll just straight up tell you. And it's actually a rather endearing trait, because these people are very honest, but then there's being brutally honest, where it's like, yeah, you want to be honest with people and all, but if you're too honest with people, you don't want to be the honest jerk, do you? I guess some people might, but yeah, it's being too honest can be a bad thing depending on how you dish it out to people. But these are also the people that are pretty cool because if you want somebody who's really honest, like, hey, does this shirt look funny on me? Yeah, they're gonna straight up tell you what they think. Sometimes they may tell you what you think. You may not even ask them their opinion, they may just tell you anyway. Well, I guess you don't ever have to worry about lying to them. You don't have to worry about them lying to you, I mean. So those are the 4 different types of communication styles. Okay, those are the 4. Why is this going to cause issues? Why does this cause barriers? Communication barriers? Because there's different type of communication styles. Let's say you put the spiritual person with the considerate person. The considerate person will be a very wonderful listener, but if the spiritual person is just, it won't be quiet. And the considerate person's a great listener, but after, like, let's say an hour of talking to the person who's blah, 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 blah all the time, you could see how that might cause issues after a while. Because even though the considerate person's a good listener, they might get kind of worn out. And then let's say you take a direct person and a systematic person. You have the person who's very systematic, very analytical, facts, knowledge, and then you have the person who's very direct. Those are the 2 people that if you get them in a really big debate, yeah, that may not end so well. It could be all fine and dandy at first, but if you have the person who's facts, oh, the facts say this is why I have this opinion, then you're going to get the direct person who doesn't really want to hear the facts. They're just going to straight up tell you how it is. Like, oh, I'm just telling you what the facts are. Oh, I'm just telling you you're a jerk. Like, yeah, you get those 2 people in a heated discussion. It may get to a point with the direct person that all logic may go out the door and they may just tell the person how they really feel. And the systematic person may want to be facts, knowledge. But if they don't feel that person can be reasoned with, yeah, they're going to get worn out. They're not going to want to keep talking to each other if they aren't on the same page or if they can't be respectful. So those are some examples about how different types of communication styles can have some bumps in the road depending on who it is you're speaking to. And those are some examples. You can have a systematic and a direct person that get along. You can have a spiritual and considerate person that get along, but you can see how, like, those 2 specifically can be opposites. So you could even have a spiritual person and an analytical person that could even butt heads. That's why when I did this project, I had a lot of fun with it. Because the show I used as an example is one I really like. I used The Big Bang Theory as an example. Well, if you watch that show, basically, I think I tried to analyze really all of them the best of my abilities. You could come up with different answers depending, but for my specific answers, I think I put that, like, Raj was really considerate because he seemed like he was usually a real good listener. Usually somebody had a problem and he had stuff of his own going on, but he seemed like he was usually the one that was really good about, like, kind of listening to people. And since he kind of had that, since he would go, like, selectively mute and he had a hard time speaking to people, he was kind of oftentimes put in more situations where he kind of had to listen more than speak anyway, so it just kind of made more sense to me. And then, Sheldon, love to hate him, hate to love him kind of thing. I said that he was systematic because he's big on facts and, very, very smart, and, he got on people's nerves, but yeah, I still like his character too. And then, I said that Leonard was very direct because every time you saw him and Sheldon arguing, Sheldon was kind of the facts, and then Leonard was like, no, I'm just telling you how it is. When he couldn't really stand him after a while. He finally just kind of got to a point where he just he wouldn't really bite his lip anymore. If he didn't like Sheldon, he would just straight up tell him. So yeah, those are kind of some examples I use. And I said that Penny was spiritual because she usually was one of the ones that had something going on with, she's all bubbly and animated, and she'd come over and, oh, guess what happened at work today? And she was getting really into whatever story she was telling them. And there were some of the other characters I kind of tried to add to. Like, I think I said that Amy was spiritual, because I feel like she's kind of like that too sometimes, that she could also be, like, systematic, depending, because she's also very knowledgeable. But of course she had more feelings kind of going on than maybe, like, Sheldon did, for example. And I think I said that, I can't remember if I said that Howard was, considerate, or if he was, systematic or which one he was. I think I said he was direct, and Bernadette, I think I said she was considerate because she was a pretty good listener. So you could see how you could take different traits of somebody's personality like that and say, well, I think this person is systematic because of this, or I think they're considerate because of this, or oh, they could be both of these at different times. And if you are somebody who has maybe a mix of being considerate and maybe you're spiritual, or if you're systematic and you're spiritual, you could see how that could cause even more communication barriers if you're talking to somebody. So when you go about your day-to-day life and you see the different types of people, and yeah, you're going to get along with some people more than others for really a variety of reasons, and communication styles is one of them. So the more you kind of think about communication styles like these, the next time you talk to anybody, talk to some random person, really kind of watch them when they speak to you and kind of think to yourself, oh, I wonder what communication style they are. Oh, they seem pretty bubbly and happy. I bet they're spiritual. Or, oh, yeah, they're a lot of facts, a lot of knowledge. I bet they're systematic or direct, because they're pretty straightforward about how they feel about things. See if you can spot different traits, kind of characteristics like that. And not only do you learn a lot about somebody as a person when you notice things like that, but if you really do think, oh, I think that person's pretty considerate, well, that might actually give you some clues as to how to communicate with this person, not only to get to know them, but maybe maybe there've been a couple bumps in the road, maybe you didn't make the greatest first impression, and maybe you can try again later, or hey, maybe I'll try to listen to this person more next time because they seem like they've got a lot to say, and yeah, I might actually learn a thing or two about them. So I just kind of wanted to provide some insight about that in this video. A little cheesy, a little random, but thought it was kind of a little interesting topic of discussion, and hopefully can shed some light as to, why people have different behaviors, different conversations go certain ways. There's certain people that maybe you have a harder time with, might explain a couple things. So now I have to ask the bigger question. Spiritual, systematic, direct, all those communication styles I listed here. Which one do you think you are? Are you a good listener? Don't do quite as much talking? Got a lot on your mind, very bubbly, kind of the center of the conversation? A lot of facts, a lot of knowledge? Or are you pretty straightforward when it comes to people? Like, do you kind of just tell them how it is rather than making them guess? Because you might learn a lot about yourself too. Until next time, have a great day, guys.